Hey, football fanatics. Welcome back to the First and 10 Club with me, your host, Mark D. It's Thursday, which means picks, predictions, and bold takes as we get ready to head into week 4 of the NFL season. So, a couple of things on tap. First things first, I did get some feedback from last week, and I want to clear something up. In our final segment, in the time to run out the clock segment, I went after analysts and journalists. Um, Look, I apologize if it came off that I am against all analysts and all journalists who do this for a living. That is not the case. I do have a lot of respect for a lot of the outfits that are out there, a lot of the professionals that are out there. Um, I wake up every day and watch Good Morning Football. Kyle Brandt, Nate Burleson, Peter Schrager, Kay Adams, I think are among the tops right now in terms of reporting NFL news. Of course, you have some of the legends: Matthew Berry, Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport. There's tons of guys that are on fantasy radio that do DFS. Howard Bender, Jennifer Pianati. Oh, I could go on and on. And there's local people that I know. I have friends that are involved with this too. Uh, what I was really getting at in my time to run out the clock segment was people that are lazy at their job, and they exist, and I called a few of them out. There's others. It's just frustrating. It's frustrating as a fan to have so much passion for this and care so much about this and not be your career, not be getting paid for it, and then watch people who make way more money than I'll probably ever see in my lifetime uh, just really kind of take it for granted. And that's just what I was trying to say. It's a little maddening when you watch a football game or you watch a show and they constantly, repeatedly, over and over again use the same name wrong or call a team wrong. I mean, this stuff has happened. So that's all I was really saying. So with that being said, though, let's get to the good stuff. Okay, so week 4 in the NFL. A little bit of a easier week, I think. Uh, God, now that I say that, that's not going to be the case. We had some tough game calls last week. I think this week you're going to have some games that are a little bit easier to decide one way or the other. We still don't know what's going on with the Pittsburgh and Tennessee game. So as of right now, obviously, unless you're under a rock, Tennessee had a COVID outbreak. Um, they had some cases test positive, and I respect what they're doing. They're trying to protect the other players. They don't want it to become an outbreak through the league, so things have been shut down. And as of right now, the game has been postponed. Now, all signs at this point are saying that it's going to be played either Monday or Tuesday. Now, there's a lot of ramifications with this because, one, if it's played on Monday, not a big deal. It's just like having 2 Monday night games. If it's played on Tuesday, there's a lot of questions you need to be prepared to ask and research and look in your leagues. And this is the reason why. So if the game is played on Tuesday, for the NFL, it's not really going to matter. However, a lot of fantasy leagues and a lot of fantasy platforms, their league week changes after the Monday night game. So now the question is, does Tennessee and Minnesota end up with 2 games on week 5? Does this game just not count this week for fantasy purposes? There's a lot of moving parts here that we need to pay attention to, and we don't have an answer yet. They have not said whether or not the game is going to be played on Monday or Tuesday, although it does look like it's going to be one of those 2 days. And I think today is a big day for that decision. Hopefully, there are no more positive tests within the Tennessee organization today when they get their results back, and they move forward as is with those. I believe it's 9 now, 8 originally, 4 players, 5 staffers. They quarantined those, and the rest of them are able to move forward as business as usual. So that's really the big news heading into this. So who do we like this week? Some really interesting games this week. The first is going to be the Thursday night game, and it's interesting because it really looks like a non-entertaining game, but there are some interesting storylines here. One is Brett Rippon getting his start. the nephew of a Super Bowl winning quarterback, third string quarterback, undrafted for John Elway's Broncos. And what it really comes down to again, and I know I'm not taking anything away from Drew Lock here. I get that he's out because of injury, but ever since John Elway came to Denver, it really has been a quarterback carousel there. They've really had a very difficult time finding a quarterback that sticks, whether it's because of injury, whether it's because of just poor play. So here we go again, and now it's a shot. So as we've seen in the NFL, all it takes is one game to become potentially a superstar in this league. So that's really the most interesting storyline that I'm going to be watching tonight. Just to see what comes of that. Do we have our next hidden gem in the NFL, the next Kurt Warner, the next Tom Brady? These are people that kind of came out of nowhere. So, who are we looking at? Let's talk about people I like this week and why. First off, defenses, the LA Rams. The LA Rams get to feast on yet another weak opponent. And it'll be a good bounce back game for them. They really had a tough go of it against Buffalo. They face the New York hapless Giants right now. Without Saquon Barkley, it looks like the Giants are potentially bringing in another running back. I'm not sure if they've made that signing or not, but Alfred Morris, former Dallas Cowboy and former Washington football team player. God, I hate that. They really need to pick a nickname soon. Sorry. End rant. The only team he hasn't played for, if he does sign with the Giants, would be the Philadelphia Eagles. But it looks like that potentially could be some more help. And then, of course, the signing last week of Devontae Freeman. So we see if he gets going, because the Rams are susceptible to the run, surprisingly, a little bit. But I love the Rams defense this week. The Giants couldn't get it going last week against a JV team of defensive players. And I do mean a JV team of defensive players. Almost the entire defensive line of the San Francisco 49ers was out. They were missing key components in their secondary. Now what are you going to do when you come up against a relatively healthy defense, one of the better in the league in 2020? It does not look good for this week, for week number 4, for Mr. Daniel Jones and his supporting cast. So I really do like the LA Rams this week. Another team that I'm excited for this week, and part of it is because of who they get to match up with, is the Houston Texans quarterback, Mr. Watson. Threw the ball around, really put up a hell of a showing last week against Pittsburgh, and this week you get the hapless Minnesota Vikings. The defense for the Minnesota Vikings just keeps seeming to let them down. I would like to say that this is the week things get better. Well, here's the thing. It's the week things get better because both of these teams can't come out of this week winless. The downside is because of the whole COVID situation between Minnesota and Tennessee, Minnesota doesn't really get to prepare for this game. Minnesota secondary is not good. It is not one of the better ones in the league. And Watson is armed with a bunch of weapons who exploit poor secondaries. So, not to mention you have Watson, who is a phenomenal quarterback with throwing the deep ball. So, love his upside this week. If you've drafted him and you've been upset with the results you've gotten, this might be the week that gets righted a little bit. My other two quarterbacks that I like this week are two quarterbacks that have already been on an absolute tear and an absolute roll. And that is one, Josh Allen. I just think that the Buffalo Bills, now it's not going to be as easy of a game for the Buffalo Bills. The Raiders are a pretty good team. I think they're a middle of the road team right now, and you're going to see kind of what they're made of. They're definitely weak at wide receiver, the Raiders, that is. But let's get back to what we're talking about, which is Josh Allen. Josh Allen just keeps seeming to find a way to get it done. It's like Josh Allen's will be done. Not to be sacrilegious, but that's really kind of what it is. He's becoming a figure, especially in Buffalo, above it all. He's made mistakes. He's had some fumbles. He's thrown some picks, but it's not phasing him. It's almost getting to be Patrick Mahomes-esque in terms of his calm, collected demeanor come game time. So with that being said, I think he has an absolute smash spot this week, and I think you're going to see another big performance from him to the tune of 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Um, Now that might not all be through the air; it might be 2 touchdowns and a running touchdown. That's just a added benefit with Josh Allen is that running capability. And then the other quarterback, Mr. Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has been on an absolute tear. Even last week with Davante Adams not there, didn't let him slow him down or didn't let it slow him down. He is throwing the ball where he wants to throw the ball. If he can't throw the ball, he has a supporting cast with his running game. Um, Lazard has really emerged as a very solid number two and proved last week that he was actually capable of holding the reins as a number one wide receiver with Adams being out. Um, whether Adams plays this week or not, it looks better, obviously, than last week. But you bring Adams back into the fold, and it just gets better. And you are playing the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons have been thrown on like they are basically Swiss cheese in the backside of their defense. There's holes everywhere. There are seams. There are places to throw the ball. And if there is a player in the National Football League that is capable of carving up a defense with ease, it is Mr. Aaron Rodgers. So I think that is going to be yet another team that's winless right now that does not get any easier this week. And I do believe that Aaron Rodgers and the Packers go on to win this game. Running backs. Well, we already talked about the Giants and the Rams game. I really do like Darrell Henderson this week. This is back-to-back weeks, 2 weeks in a row that he's really put up some great numbers. And he did against Buffalo. Well, newsflash, the Giants defense is far more susceptible to the run than the Buffalo Bills is. So I do like the upside of Darrell Henderson this week from the Rams. Love Alvin Kamara again. Look, I'm not going to say it's going to be an easy game going against Detroit, but Alvin Kamara is just the offense for the Saints right now. So if you have him, obviously you're not benching him anyway, but for daily fantasy, this might be another good week. And normally I don't chase points. I'm not chasing points. Let's make that clear. I'm not chasing points from last week. I know he had a monumental nuclear game last week. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm not chasing those points. I'm not saying don't expect another crazy performance like that. I'm saying I do like his output potential. And then the last one is the ageless wonder, the guy who just keeps playing. And that is Mr. Frank Gore on tonight's Thursday Night Football. The reason why I like Frank Gore is because Denver's defense it's like San Francisco, at least on the defensive side of the ball. It seems to me like they're playing their JV team. They lost Jurrell Casey, who, if you want to talk about run-stopping capabilities and keeping players and blockers off of linebackers, that was Jurrell Casey, and now he's out. So you have already lost Von Miller. You've lost defensive players all over the field. I just think Adam Gase is smart enough. God, I can't believe that just came out of my mouth. But I do believe Adam Gase is smart enough to understand that they need to win this game. I think it is going to be a very slow, methodical, not necessarily super exciting game to watch. And I do believe that Frank Gore has a great game tonight to the tune of I expect you to see I do. I expect to have him see 100 yards potentially and a touchdown. So I guess that is a bold take. Normally for a running back for me to say 100 yards and a touchdown, I don't take as that bold. But being that it's Frank Gore, I think Mr. Gore, 100 yards, touchdown, that's a bonus bold take for today's show. Wide receivers, pretty simple here. Definitely going Hollywood Brown this week. Washington is playing the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens got, in my opinion, embarrassed against Kansas City on Monday Night Football. And if there's one thing that we really struggle with, it's wide receivers going deep. Part of that is Troy Pike. He just seems to get beat in coverage on a regular basis, week in and week out. It's definitely a hole for the Washington defense. And Hollywood Brown is due, for lack of better terminology. And it's not necessarily great advice in DFS or in fantasy, but Hollywood Brown is absolutely due. He's been virtually silent so far in the fantasy season. I believe Lamar Jackson and him connect for at least one deep touchdown, possibly maybe even two or more. Love Will Fuller this week for the same reasons I like Watson. Minnesota's defense, their corners are young and they are getting a little better, but I do expect him to have a big week. And I really like Tyler Boyd this week for the Cincinnati Bengals. I just think he is going to continue to see that target share and continue to produce with Joe Burrow. Tight ends I like this week. Hawkinson, TJ Hawkinson, I think, is in a position to put up some good numbers. I do know that Galladay's back, and yeah, that might hurt his value a little bit. But the Saints have struggled against tight ends. They really have. And you have a very athletic tight end coming in here. I believe, at least in red zone looks, you're potentially going to see some options for him. Love Noah Fant this week simply because with Brett Rippon having his first start, I think you're going to look for a safety valve, and that's a very sure way to go. Good hands, crisp route running, dependable receiver for him to kind of lean on here in his first NFL start. And then my big smash spot this week, especially if we'll even say 90% healthy. So San Francisco unfortunately lost Jordan Reed, but it's okay because George Kittle, who may be the best tight end when healthy in the NFL, is back. And back against the Philadelphia Eagles, who, although Cincinnati didn't exploit it, struggles tremendously against covering the tight end. So George Kittle, welcome back this week. He is going to come back and might be a very sneaky play for DFS because he's been out a couple of weeks, so he's not really on people's radar. So that's who I like for the week. Players that I am just fading for the week, I'm just not into. And again, let me stress for the players I don't like this week. It's not saying, and you're going to see when I get to my list here, I'm not saying that they're going to be completely void of production, that they're not going to show up at all on the stat sheet. What I'm saying is don't expect the output from them that you might have seen week in and week out. In certain cases, that doesn't mean you bench them. Please understand that. Just because I say that I'm not high on them or I'm fading them, that doesn't mean that you bench them. Really, with this segment more for yearly fantasy, but this is more for maybe daily fantasy. Kind of stay away from some of these teams. First off is the Steelers versus the Titans. And the only reason I'm saying that is I want to see the Steelers prove it. I don't think the Steelers have had a real strong team to go up against. And I know they kind of get the little added benefit here that Tennessee's not game planning for them or preparing. It's a gut feel. And honestly, this is just a gut feeling on this one. The narrative on this, the Denver Broncos put up points against them with a backup quarterback. And Tennessee is just a much better offense. They are a gritty team. We've talked about this. They're a gritty team. They're going to hang in there. They're going to keep fighting. They're going to keep punching you in the mouth. They're going to keep trying to knock you down. And I just wonder if the Steelers potentially maybe come out a little flat on this one. I'm not saying that they lose the game. I haven't. I don't know. I'm not expecting the dominant Steelers performance. Not to mention you have Henry there who prides in being a just demolition, wrecking crew running back. And I think this is the type of game that he'll take pride in, that you can't run against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think he's going to go after it. The other one, hear me out on this, is the Baltimore Ravens. Now, again, it seems to be the situation where this would be a smash spot for them. But this is one of those things where we talk about chasing points. So Washington has struggled. Yes, they, I think, are second right now in the league with turnovers. They have 7 of them. But it's just one of those things where it sets up to be a situation where you're chasing points. I'm not saying that Washington is going to win this game. I'm not. I know, fans. I'm sorry, but I got to be realistic. But what I can see, though, is this being just a very good, solid game for Baltimore's defense. Meaning there's no turnovers. Maybe there's not as many sacks. Washington scores some points, and it just doesn't really work out for you for fantasy. That's all I'm really saying with it. So be careful with that. That's why I said I'm fading them a little bit. I think, not to mention, I think just everyone is going to go that route, especially for daily fantasy. I think they're going to be very, very popular owned. Quarterbacks that I'm fading. Patrick Mahomes. Oh, okay, yep, I'm saying it. Patrick Mahomes. Again, not saying he's going to have a bad week. What I'm saying, though, is you just had it's a short week. You're coming off a Monday Night Football game. You balled out. Again, don't just automatically assume that you're going to be a lock to get these points week in and week out. Now, again, not saying you don't play him if he's on your yearly drafted, redraft, dynasty, fantasy team. What I'm talking about more here is DFS. He's going up against the New England Patriots, and if there's a team that exists in the league that can at least slow him down, I'm going to go with New England here. They do have a very stout secondary, and Bill Belichick schemes to take away a team's best player. And I believe 100% the best player on the team here is Patrick Mahomes. I could see this being a game where Clyde Edwards-Helaire has a much larger role and in turn sees more of that fantasy production than Mahomes. It would be a situation where I'm not saying Kansas City doesn't get the win, but I don't necessarily know that it's going to be on the back of a 300-yard, 5-touchdown performance from Patrick Mahomes. The other one that I'm absolutely fading is Mr. Nick Foles. Welcome to the starting lineup of the Chicago Bears. And it's not just because I'm hesitant with Nick Foles and his ability. What I am aware of, though, is there is one person that really unlocked the potential of Nick Foles, who knew his strengths and weaknesses, and that was the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles during their Super Bowl run. And that offensive coordinator is now the head coach of one Indianapolis Colts, Frank Reich, Foles' opponent. Indianapolis doesn't have a horrible defense. They can get after the quarterback. They have a secondary that's fairly decent in coverage. And you have an offensive coordinator who knows the strengths and weaknesses of the opponent's quarterback. Doesn't necessarily pose to be a great day for Nick Foles. So I'm fading there. Running backs, I'm fading. So I'm putting this out there. I don't know when and if the game's going to get played, if it's Monday, Tuesday, if it ends up not happening. Hopefully that's not the case. But I'm fading Derrick Henry and James Conner this week, mainly because I think it is going to be a very low-scoring affair. And I really think both defenses here are very stout. So I'm just not putting my eggs in those baskets. And the other running back that I am fading this week, and this is a bold take, is Kenyon Drake. Everyone is looking at this week's matchup against the Carolina Panthers as Kenyon Drake's coming out party for 2020. I just don't see it. I think it's going to be the easy selection. Everyone's going to go there. Everyone's going to pick Kenyon Drake. And I am very, very afraid that it ends up being a little bit of a timeshare between Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds. And when I say that, I'm not saying that Chase Edmonds and him split carries 50-50, but Kenyon Drake does the running. Edmonds steals a touchdown from him. And then you have to take into account the best running back on that team, or what they think is the best running back on that team, which is Kyler Murray. I just don't think it's going to be a smash spot like some other people are predicting. Wide receivers that I'm just out on this week, one is Slayton from the New York Giants. You couldn't do anything last week against backup corners, and your offense is just not clicking right now. And this week you get to go play the LA Rams and Jalen Ramsey. Definitely not putting my investment or my hope in Darius Slayton. The other one is Tyreek Hill. And again, this just goes back to the Patriots and the way they play defense. I think they will try and neutralize him. And you also have potentially one of the best duos or tandems of cornerbacks in the league that get to cover him. I think if the Chiefs have success this week, it's going to be through some unnamed or unlikely names. Mecole Hardman could have another decent week. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think you could see a Robinson touchdown snuck in there. Tight ends that I'm also fading this week. Hayden Hurst. I just don't see it getting done this week. Um, Atlanta, I fully expect to utilize their wide receivers this week. And then going back to the Giants, I hate to beat a dead horse, but Evan Ingram, you're not getting it done to begin with. I just don't see you getting it done against the Rams. So that is that. That's who we like, who we don't like. Bold predictions for the week. It was a little tough to put these together, but I think I have some good ones. And I gave you the bonus one. I gave you the bonus one for Frank Gore, 100 yards and a touchdown, which is still kind of comical to me to think that's a bold prediction, but I guess for him it is. So my bold predictions in the Cleveland Browns Dallas Cowboys game. I think Ezekiel Elliott and Nick Chubb both run for 150 yards and a touchdown. I do. I think it's going to be a high scoring affair, and I think the Browns are starting to realize what they have in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. But I think Nick Chubb really weathers the load. I think he breaks a big one in this game. And I think Elliott does the exact same thing on the other side. I think you're going to see two great running performances in this game. So 150 yards for both of them and a touchdown. My second one is with our wonderful quarterback of the Houston Texans, Watson. I do think that he goes off this week. As a matter of fact, I think he could finish the week as potentially the top quarterback. You have two teams that are desperate for a win. You have a quarterback that is an offensive playmaker. We talk about the Josh Allens, the Lamar Jacksons, Patrick Mahomes, and it's almost like Watson's getting forgotten that he is capable of putting up these ridiculous performances. So I think Watson throws for 350 yards this week and 3 touchdowns in a win against the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah. Sorry, Vikings fans. It's going to be a long season. And then my last bold prediction is going to be for tonight's game. I am predicting less than 25 points in tonight's game. It's not going to be an exciting one. I'd like to say that it's going to be this great defense, but I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be just messy, sloppy performance football. And that's what we get to watch on Thursday night. So, we'll see. You know what I mean? I'll give you my prediction, exactly what I think that score is going to be in a little bit here, but that's my other bold prediction. Less than 25 points scored in tonight's game. So let's get into game predictions. Washington football team. Fans, I'm sorry if I'm letting you down, but I'm being realistic. And unfortunately, the lock for the week for me is the Baltimore Ravens over the Washington football team. Now, my silver lining in this is I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm very wrong. And I will be happier than a pig in shit if I get to come back next week on Tuesday and say I was wrong for this pick. Because I'm a fan. I'm absolutely a fan. But I think the schedule makers did us one dirty because the game that they had to play on Monday night against Kansas City, you have a team that's looking to bounce back, that knows it needs to bounce back, that has the ability to bounce back, against a team that's just missing some pieces right now. And I've said this over and over. We are missing some pieces right now. The big thing that affects things more than anything this week in my decision on this is Chase Young not looking like he's going to play. If there was any hope of us containing Lamar Jackson, it would have been if Chase Young was on the field. That's not the case. I do think Baltimore gets the win in this one. I do think Washington makes the game competitive, and I don't think it's a mess. I don't think it's a blowout, but I think this is a pretty easy win for the Baltimore Ravens. Hopefully I'm wrong. Maybe picking against my team will help us get a win. Other games I like this week, Arizona to bounce back against the Carolina Panthers. I think the Panthers were gifted a win last week. I don't think they are a strong football team. And Arizona, I think, got punched in the mouth, and I think they respond to come back and, try and remain competitive in that NFC West. Sorry, Philadelphia fans. I just don't have a lot of hope. I'm picking the San Francisco 49ers It's a mix of the 49er Golden Nuggets, their JV team, and the actual pro team as they get Kittle back this week. Some other players are slated to become a little healthier. I just don't believe Philly has the ability right now to win a game like this. I think Philly is reeling right now. This could be a good situation where Philly comes out and surprises a team, but I'm just not. I don't see it. I'm picking the 49ers to beat Philly this week and continue Philly's rough start. And then for the Thursday night game, my picks for the Thursday night game. I am picking the Jets. Yeah, I'm on the Jets bandwagon for tonight. Simply because Denver is just beat up across the board. They're just dealing with injuries everywhere. And they are starting a undrafted third round quarterback or a third string quarterback in Brett Rippon. As much as I want to root for him to succeed, I'm picking the Jets in a stinker. Sorry, if you're looking for exciting football tonight, you're not going to get it. Picking the Jets 14-10. Yeah, lots of points to go around tonight. Wouldn't really invest in this one for daily fantasy because it's just not going to have the output that you need. 14-10 for tonight's game. So with that, it's time to run out the clock. All right, so maybe I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm going to keep talking about this until I think something is done because I really feel that important about it. Trysten Hill, Dallas Cowboys, our thug of the week. NFL, what are you doing? Still no suspension. Still no fine. Really hasn't been anything said about it other than we didn't think it was it wasn't intentional. You have an entire team in Seattle coming out and saying it's intentional. You have pundits across the United States. You have journalists. You have fans. You have bloggers all coming out saying it's intentional. The only person that's really I've heard say that it wasn't intentional or didn't intend to hurt him was the coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Something needs to be done there. Stop dragging ass. You can make a statement anywhere else. Should be clear cut and simple. There should be a suspension. There should be a fine. And if you're trying to figure out what that's going to be, that's fine. Well, then say that. I haven't seen a statement from the NFL saying they're reviewing it. So, the next, the NFL TV schedule in 2020. I've started to take notice of this, and maybe it's because I live in an out of market, or I'm a fan of a team that's out of market. But is anybody else just getting tired of seeing the same teams on TV? To the point where it's like every single week. And if you do want to have a shot at a primetime game, it's Thursday night. Because obviously for Thursday night, they don't care if they give us crappier teams, which is weird. I don't understand. Like, if you want to get these teams on, like, I just think there should be exposure for all teams. And when you're gonna do it, let's spread it out a little bit. To me, it's there's a lot of really good teams in the NFL every year. And it's a little maddening when your primetime games for 3 weeks in a row feature the same teams or back-to-back teams. You know, one week they're on Sunday night, the following week they're on Monday night. Can we spread it out a little bit? Can we try and actually put some games on Thursday night that people might actually want to watch? I guess, with COVID this year, it added an extra challenge. I don't know. But it doesn't seem like the NFL TV schedule makers or the NFL schedule makers really put out an A effort this year. Obviously, games change, teams change. You can't predict everything, that's fine. But you can prevent having the same teams on primetime games for 3-4 weeks in a row. Spread it out. There's a reason why people are like, oh, everyone's Dallas fans. That's because that's all you show. It's always, Dallas always is America's game of the week. Come up with some different games. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I would have loved for the Rams and the Buffalo Bills to have been last week's game of the week. Get some exposure out there to some of these newer players, some of the younger players. My 2 cents on that. And for our final kneel down today, I want to talk about records and a little bit of twist on records. I think records are going to be shattered in 2020. And I think, in all honesty, this is a very clever ploy by the NFL front office and the officiating crew to kind of help keep our attention off of everything else going on in the world. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't think they're trying to like pull the wool over our eyes. I actually tip my cap to them on this. So we like to see points. We like to see things. We like to have storylines of, will the touchdown record be broken? Will this record be broken? Well, we like to follow those sort of things, and it's fun. Scoring points is fun. Watching in baseball, people hit home runs is fun. Watching 15, 23 pointers in a game is fun in basketball. We like to see scoring. We like to see that offensive approach. And you're definitely seeing that right now. And I think part of the reason you are seeing that is because we haven't seen a lot of penalties called in games. It's definitely down from previous years. It's a little maddening as a fan because I sit there and I watch the game and I'm like, oh, that's a hold. But they're not calling it. And for the most part, it does seem to be across the board. It seems to be fair. There hasn't been a whole lot of one-sided games this year. But I do think that the intention this year was to kind of allow players and games to be played a little more wide open. So I do think you're going to see scoring continue at a record pace. I think you're going to see a ton of touchdowns thrown this year. I think you might see a couple quarterbacks 40-plus touchdowns. You might even see a couple of them flirt with 50. Maybe a record gets broken this year. Maybe we see some rushing, touchdown records get broken. It's definitely wide open. I'm loving it as a fan. So keep it up. It's great. I love the idea of having points every week. That to me is much more entertaining than watching, a slow, methodic, defensive, run the ball pace where every other play there's a penalty and we got to stop things and I'm trying to be as monotone as possible to drive my point home. So that's my 2 cents this week. And our final kneel down. Hope you enjoyed the preview show. Week number 4 is coming up. I think it's going to be a great week. Heading into next week, we're going to get 3 shows next week, although I'll be honest, one of my shows is going to be for my fellow Washington football team fans. I'm going to look at the team through the first quarter of the season, where our deficiencies are, where our strengths are, why we should have hope, why we should have doubt, and what to expect moving into the second quarter of the 2020 season. That's probably going to come out on either Monday or Wednesday. Tuesday, of course, will be our weekly recap show, and Thursday will be our predictions. So I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you liked what you saw. Again, if you haven't already, click the subscribe button down below here. Share it with your friends. Don't keep all this information just for yourself. Like, comment. Please make comments in the threads or on Twitter. If you have questions, feel free to ask. I'll gladly give my 2 cents on it. But that's it for the First and 10 Club. And as always, let's go football.